88.7 FM KAZI. Your boy Jabari Warfield in 841. Once again, good morning to you. Glad you're joining us on the morning grind. And as promised, you know, technicalities and technical issues and things, they just kind of happen. So you just kind of roll with the punches. Anyway, one more time, a very special guest who's going to be coming here to the Austin area October 10th. He is going to be at the Dealey Center, and this is all sponsored by the Warfield Center for African American Studies. He is going to be coming here to talk about his book called My Life in the Sunshine, and we are happy to once again bring him on, Mr. Nabil Ayers. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jabari. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. Good to hear your voice, man. I'm sitting up here scrambling on this board, bro. Yeah, man, I got you, man. Trust me.
Right.
But when the coffee doesn't kick in, my technical issues don't kick in very well. But first of all, thank you very much for being on. I certainly appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
All right, we're going to talk about legacy. We're going to talk about what family means, and kind of touch on what's going on in a book that you have. And you're going to be, of course, talking to some folks here in Austin on October 10th at the Dealey Center, which is once again being sponsored by the Warfield Center for African American Studies. And from what I understand, you're going to be happy to come to Austin while South by Southwest is not happening.
Yeah, it's funny. I've played in bands for most of my life, and now I work for a record company. But I've been to Austin so many times during South by Southwest, which is always a really great time, but it's just so hectic and crazy. And so I'm excited to come there when it's not like that and just, you know, have a hopefully more relaxed time and meet some people and eat some delicious food.
Yeah, man, no doubt about it. Well, if you hang too long, man, let's hook up, man. Let's sit down and talk and all of that good stuff, man. It would be an honor to meet you.
I'd love that, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now, let's get to the heart of things. You are the son of Roy Ayers, who is an absolute legend in the game. He's still doing his thing. I just saw an NPR Tiny Desk concert that he has done. But your story, your existence is different from most, or it has a very interesting start. Your life has a very interesting start. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, when my mother was pretty young, 20 years old in New York City, she met Roy quickly at a jazz club, and she said to herself, "This is the person I'm going to have a child with." And I think most importantly, she didn't say, "This is the person I'm going to marry," or "This is the person I'm going to be with." She just knew she wanted to have a child with Roy, and this is in the early 70s, obviously a different time in New York. And so fast forward maybe a year later, they never dated, they barely knew each other, and she saw him one night and said, "I want to have a child, I want you to be the father, and you don't need to be involved." And he agreed. So I've always known that story. So Roy is my father, but I don't know him. I met him a few times briefly as a kid, but I was raised by my mother and my uncle very deliberately. He never left us. There wasn't a divorce. So it was a very positive, great childhood, but a unique one because he was always around, because I knew his music and I saw his albums in stores and I would see him in concert listings. And so, you know, as I grew older, I became more curious.
What was that like? I mean, did you ever have any resentment or any kind of, I mean, you know, as a teenager, we're naturally rebellious and nothing's right and our parents are crazy and all of this stuff. You know, how did that feel growing up?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a common one, and I think very few people have a story like mine, and so I think a lot of people sort of projected their issues on me, and people expected me, especially as a teenager, as you say, to be angry, to feel resentment, and I never did, because I always knew the story. They kind of had this agreement. I had a great childhood. I had a wonderful father figure in my uncle, and it never felt like anything was missing in my life. It didn't feel like my father was gone because he'd never been there in the first place. But once I got older, when I was in my 30s, I finally decided, I'm 51 now, in my 30s, about 15 years ago, I decided I wanted to try to meet my father. He was probably getting close to 70, and I thought, you know, if I ever want to meet him, it's probably time. So I was able to get in touch with him. We had this incredible lunch and really connected, and really I noticed all the physical similarities and the way we laughed the same, and these really incredible things we had in common. But after that, he kind of just wasn't interested in staying in touch. And so that's the first time, 35 years into my life, that I really started to feel that anger and that resentment that people, I think, expected me to feel my whole life, but that that really didn't happen till then.
And that's got to be pretty tough, because I mean you see him everywhere. He's visible. He's still he's still here, thank God. But still the relationship wasn't as complete as you wanted it to be, or as complete as it
Right.
in certain aspects it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, and at that point, at 35, it's not like I was looking for a father. It was more that I wanted to learn more about his family and, our ancestors, and even just health history. Even, aside from a relationship, there was this information that I wanted. So it was really hard to sort of feel that rejection for the first time as an adult.
Exactly. Now, you've carved a niche for yourself in music. You are the president of Beggars Group US, which has over 100 artists, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adele, David Byrne from the Talking Heads, Alabama Shakes, just a few artists there. What got you into wanting to not only be a musician, because you are a musician as well, but take it to like several levels up to be the president of one of the biggest record groups in the world?
Right. That's. I think I always knew as a kid that I wanted to be in music. It was never a decision. It was always there. So I don't remember not being into music. And this is the sort of nature versus nurture thing, where my father is this, very famous, talented musician and songwriter, composer, everything. But I was never exposed to that other than through his records and then seeing him live a couple times. And my uncle, my mother's brother, is also a very talented saxophone player. And he's the one who bought me a drum set when I was 2.5 years old, and the person who took me to concerts constantly and played music with me and taught me music and bought me records. And so there's always this kind of, does it come from my DNA, or does it come from this person who truly spent so much time and energy exposing me to music? And at the same time, even as a kid, I was always interested in the business side. I didn't even see it as a different side. I would play my Kiss and Stevie Wonder records to death, and I would look at the back and I would say, I wonder what that Motown logo means, or I wonder what that Casablanca logo means. Right. And I would try to start bands with my friends when I was 7 or 8 years old, and we would charge people $1 at the door when we played a concert, and then we would split that money. So to me, without even knowing I was doing it, I was in the music business kind of from the moment I started being interested in music. So it feels natural to me that over time, in my 20s and 30s, I played drums in a lot of bands, really toured a lot, toured the world, which is incredibly exciting, but also owned a record store and put out records on my own small label, and then did the business stuff on the side. And eventually, again, I'm 51 now, so stopped touring a while ago and started working full-time for what I think is the best record label in the world, and now that's my real job. So to me, it's always just been the same thing. It's just been music without a business side or a music side.
So, Nabil, this is Douglas. Thanks for joining us this morning. I didn't know I was going to get a chance to talk to a nobleman. I looked it up in Arabic. Nabil is noble. Is that where some of the lineage of your naming came from?
Yeah, it means, I think there's different definitions, but the one that I've always been told is noble, learned, and generous.
Ah, nice. Nice.
So I was just kind of curious. I am loving that the musical background that you came from. So I got to ask, first of all, who's in rotation right now with you?
Oh, wow. It's 6 a.m. in California. I wasn't ready for this one, but let me think about it. I love an Atlanta punk band called Upchuck, who has a black female singer, which to me is an anomaly in punk, and they're just very exciting and write really interesting music. I love a woman called Sudan Archives, who is technically a violinist, but it's not classical music. It's not violin music. It's much more sort of really cool modern R&B, I suppose I would call it.
Yeah.
Those are two of my favorites right now.
And then, so your uncle started you off with the drums. I'm going to say you probably stuck with that. Maybe you didn't follow in the horns, but who were your influences growing up? The bands that really drew your attention, because it sounded like maybe you were trying to go with a certain sound, but I want to know who got you pumped up growing up.
Yeah, there's one very obvious answer that comes to me, which is Kiss, which is pretty funny, being
really?
The son of a jazz musician and the nephew of my uncle, who's also a jazz musician. But I think it's just that I was a kid in the 70s And if you were a kid in the 70s, Kiss was pretty
Yeah.
ubiquitous. It was everywhere, the T-shirts, the makeup, and I just fell in love with this album, Destroyer, that I bought when I was 5 years old. And there's an interesting racial element to this. I tell this story as part of the presentation, and I have pictures of me in Kiss makeup when I'm 5 years old with a big afro. It's a pretty funny picture.
Nice.
But,
You got to send us
but
that
to
one.
me, yeah. But I had trouble. My mother's white, my father's black. I remember looking at my Beatles records and thinking, well, I'll never be in a band because I don't look like those guys. They're white and they have, really straight brown hair. And I looked at my Stevie Wonder records and thought, I don't know. He has a much tighter afro and darker skin. This is from a kid's perspective. I really remember thinking, I don't know if I can be in a band because I don't look like anyone who's in a band. But when I put on Kiss makeup, when my mother sat me down and spent all this time putting on the crazy face and the cat eyes and all that stuff, and I have pictures of this, and I would sit down at my drum set and play along to the record, that was what told me I could be in a band because I could look like them. So they were more than just a band that I liked to listen to. It was sort of helpful with my identity.
Man, this is so exciting with all the different layers that brought you to this point. I got to know, what was that spark? Was there a person that said, your story is going to be something that most people have never heard of? You should write a book. I got to know, what lit that flame?
Right. That's a really good question because I think the answer is almost the opposite. I worked for a record company, played music, and that's kind of all I've done very happily my entire life. And 6 or 7 years ago, I just started writing for fun. I think I was in my 40s, and I had a lot of stories that I was looking back on. I have a good memory. I'm blessed with that, and was writing a lot about the fun stories of the bands I used to play in and about the record store I owned. And my wife, who's very supportive, was like, this is great. This is really fun. What you need to do is write about your father and your race because that's what you're really interested in.
Right.
And that idea really scared me, and I wasn't trying to write a book. I was just writing for fun. And so what I did is I thought, well, I don't know how to write about my father, Roy Ayers. I've never known him. But what I can do is I can write about the few times I've met him. I can write about that lunch we had when I was 35. I remember being 8 or 9 years old and my uncle taking me to Electric Lady Studios to see him record and just hanging out there for like 10 minutes one night. It was very short, but I remember that really well. And once I kind of got through those stories, I've started thinking, wow, I could write about what it feels like to sit down and to see Straight Outta Compton, that movie that came out around that time, not expecting anything, and to have Everybody Loves the Sunshine suddenly blast over the stereo as Dr. Dre's in the scene as a teenager. So there are all these moments in my life where my father existed in some way, and I just started writing all of them. And in the end, when I kind of ran out of stories, I realized, wow, I wonder if this could be a book. It's this spans 40-something years, and the book is certainly not just those stories. I've intertwined lots of narrative and lots of music, and there's sort of some crazy things that happen towards the end. But that's really what got it started, was just this natural desire to write about my father.
So, Nabil, this has been amazing. Like I'm gesturing over to my co-host here, and I'm like, man, I got like so much more. Here's one that I'm dying to know here. You had a great relationship growing up with your mom. It sounds like your uncle. Taking the last name of Ayers, it sounds like from the arrangement that you were born under your mother's name, but embracing Ayers now, I'm kind of curious, did you feel that you were going to maybe be offending those who were in your formative years by taking on that last name? Kind of curious about that journey to be Nabil Ayers now.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what happened, yes, I was born with my mother and uncle's name, Ralphman, and grew up with that. And when I was finishing high school, which was 1989, I remember my mother saying, I was going away to college in Seattle where I'd never been, didn't know anybody, and she just said, Ralphman is a really hard name. If you ever want to think about changing it, meaning hard name to spell, hard name to pronounce and everything, she was like, you could have you could have a clean slate, you could have a much easier life if you thought about changing your last name. She didn't suggest a last name, and I remember thinking, well, the only one I can think of is Ayers because it's my father's name, and it wasn't even that I felt a connection to him as much as it was the only one that I could think of that I wouldn't have to make up. So there was some connection, and I liked it. I also remember thinking it has 5 letters just like my first name, and it would look cool. This is, the teenage brain working.
Yeah.
But the interesting part of it, so I did that, and that's when I became Nabil Ayers, and I went to college, and no one ever said, oh, you changed your name, because I didn't know anyone. So it was a really easy transition. But at the time, I was 17, which means my father was probably 47, and in my brain, that was the late 80s, so he was still very active. He's always been active. But to me, listening to rock bands and Guns N' Roses and watching MTV, I wasn't aware of that activity. So I thought, he's old. His career is over. He's almost 50.
Yeah.
Funny saying this now.
Yeah.
So there's no part of me that thought, I wonder if in 5 years he's going to have this huge resurgence and everyone's going to ask me if I'm his son, which is what happened. But I really wasn't planning on that. I was just choosing a name that I thought sounded good.
That's fantastic, man. What a great story.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
it is.
Oh my gosh. All right, so one more question for you, and then we're going to let you retract back into the time that is about 2 hours. Worked about 2 hours.
I think he's going back to sleep.
Yeah.
I think my money's on him going back to sleep.
Bro, my money's on. I'm a double. I'll take your money and double it, because that's what I'd be doing. The book is called My Life in the Sunshine: A Talk About Family Ties, Musical Legacies, and Racial Identity, and searching for your father and discovering your family. Have you discovered your family? Have you found peace with all of this?
Yes. It's a very simple answer now, and it used to be so much more complicated, but writing the book really helped me get to that point. And without giving away everything, and I'll get into a lot of this at the talk on Tuesday in Austin. But, after that meeting with my father, when I realized, okay, I'm not going to get much more from him, I should just be happy with what I got. But how am I going to learn more about my family? I want to know about my ancestors. I want to know, where I came from on my father's side. So I did 23andMe, and that didn't really tell me anything that, my DNA was what I expected it to be. But it did open up this communication system, and a cousin reached out and said, I have an Ayers family tree you might want.
Nice.
And suddenly I got this document that's this incredible thing. I never knew any of this information. It goes back to one enslaved man in Alabama, Isaac Ayers, in 1824, and it still tells the story of every one of our ancestors since then. And that document connected me with so many more people, and now I'm really close with some cousins and even my aunt on my father's side, and it just continues to grow. The most fun thing about still doing book tour events and readings and everything is not just doing it and meeting people and traveling, but it's that a lot of people show up in some cities who I'm either related to or who are maybe my father's bandmates from the 70s and played on Everybody Loves the Sunshine. I've gotten to know the keyboard player and the singer from that band, which is crazy. So it's absolutely opened up this huge extended family, and it's really exciting.
Jabari, we gotta know, for the African ancestry, where was that African portion? Was it Nigerian, West African? Where was that?
It was West African.
Okay.
Yeah, West
Nice.
African. Sub-Saharan African.
Sub-Saharan African, boy, that's
West Side.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's good stuff.
Hey, Nabil,
Capital
before
A.
we go, we're gonna need your if the listeners would like to follow you, if we could get your social media, that would be a great opportunity for them to connect.
Yeah, I'm just Nabil Ayers, which is NABILAYERS with an @ sign on Instagram and Twitter, and it's NabilAyers.com. It's very simple. No one has that name, so I was able to get it everywhere.
It's nice to have a name nobody else has.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, Nabil Ayers, man, we thank you for blessing us with your time this morning, brother. I know it's a little early out there, out in Cali, but we appreciate you waking up with us, man. Great talk. We really appreciate it. Once again, Nabil Ayers is going to be at the Dealey Center for New Media on October the 10th, and this is at 5:30, and this is free to the public, and he will be talking about his book and his life. The book is called My Life in the Sunshine: A Talk About Family Ties, Musical Legacies, and Racial Identity. This is all being sponsored by the John L. Warfield Center for African and African American Studies. And man, when next time you come down, if I don't catch you this time around, man, you got to come through and let's have some whatever you want to eat, man. Mexican food, barbecue, you name it.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'd love that. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been fun talking to you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in Austin on Tuesday.
Thank you, Nabil.
Awesome.
We
Thanks for
appreciate
coming.
it. Thanks for coming through.
All right, have a good one.
All right,
too.
you too. This is KAZI Austin, 88.7 FM KAZI. The Morning Grind. Douglas Washington's in the building. Your boy Jabari Warfield's in. What an incredible conversation with him, man.
I'm telling you, we need our people to show up, show out, and it's okay. So it's a free event.
Right.
He ain't trying to get in your pocket, and it's an interesting story. If you're a jazz fan,
yeah.
If you're a family life fan, if you're a single mother fan, I mean, his single mother, she raised a remarkable young man.
But she wanted to do it on her own.
Let's go to that, and she did.
She wanted to.
Look
do
how he
it on
turned
her
out.
own. Yeah. Yeah.
It's an uplifting story. I want single parents to show up and realize that there are success stories. Because all we hear is about the negative stuff.
Of course.
Let's talk about the positive stuff.
Yeah.
His mother has raised a nobleman.
Exactly. She has.
Indeed, literally a noble man.
That's crazy, though.
That's
bro.
his name.
Like she said, yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's pretty tight now. I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah.
So I got to give you mad props. to
Teamwork,
that.
brother.
Teamwork makes the dream work, baby. And we dreaming, man. Yeah, what incredible. I mean, because I've listened to Roy Ayers' music every day, and we played it on this station and everything, man. But to hear the connection, and I know what it's like to be the son of a giant in the community. I know what that's like, and to try and forge the kind of relationship you want, and to get the love and the connection that you're supposed to have. But I mean, he that's great, because it's like, and we hear about like guys like Nick Cannon,
yes,
right? Who's had all these kids,
yes.
But Nick was honest. Nick said, okay, I want to have a child with you. I have a child with other women,
yeah.
But I want to have a child with you. Are you down?
Yes.
Right. You don't hear those kind of stories.
No.
And I know everybody clowns Nick, but at least he's honest enough to say this is the deal. It's not like he's getting caught by TMZ or something.
His mom was confident and self-assured. She knew what she wanted. I mean, at the end of the day, think of this. Ain't no different from a person going to a sperm donor.
That's true.
Am I right?
That's true.
You ain't got to spend that kind of money. You see an amazingly talented person, and if you have the opportunity and you say to yourself, instead of some other rando, this is what I got. I mean, at the end of the day, I applaud the self-esteem and the confidence that his mom had. I applaud who he is now. Did he sound bitter?
No.
Did he sound jaded? Did he sound like, man, I'm out here and I'm trying to rail against that which is Roy? None of that. He is confident, self-assured himself. And why wouldn't he be? Look at the role model mom he had. We getting into a parenting talk right now. I'm going to get off the soapbox shortly, but you are what you put out into this world. You want your kid to turn out a certain way? Be that. Be that example.
Yes, sir.
Like this young man's mom did.
Yes, sir. And that's exactly what she did. So, yeah, shout out to my man, Nabil Ayers, man.